have access to the chapter 2 in-class discussion notes, as well as the additional math problems for chapter 2. That is in the modules. Let's see, that is in module number 2. Okay. Get started. Any questions or comments about the videos that y'all, I know every single one of you watched? Any questions that came up during that time? No. All right. Let me get my screen sharing. All right, so we are going to be discussing what in chapter 2?
Budget.
Budgets, yes, absolutely. How many of you all have a budget at home that you work off of? Okay. I have to admit, I try to do a budget. I'm not so good at it. When it comes to my own personal budget. Now, if I'm doing my budget for other organizations, give me 1 second. Let me make sure this is turned off. When I do budgets for other people's, other organizations, other associations, I'm really particular about it. But for whatever reason, my own personal budget, it's just hard for me to grasp. But I think that part of it is because if I fail privately, that's okay, right? But I don't want to fail publicly with other people's money. And so I think that's one main reason why. Jessica, you guys still able to hear me okay? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure the microphone's working. So a budget is what? Why do we make budgets? Daniel.
You don't spend too much money.
Okay, so we don't spend too much money. Okay, so we know how much money we're allowed to spend. Okay, what else? Why else do we do budgets?
So we can earn money.
Why do you do a budget for home?
Stable bills.
Because what?
Stable bills.
To stay what? Sorry, one more. Yeah, so you make sure you have everything that you need to have covered, right? So just like you have bills to pay, restaurants also have bills to pay. Okay, we have money coming in, right? As individuals, we have a paycheck coming in. For the restaurant, the revenue coming in is the money that people are spending in our restaurant. Okay, and so a budget is essentially is just a plan. It's a plan of how much money we expect to come in and how much money we expect to go out. Okay. And so typically, when we budget, we are using a forecasting process. Okay. When we budget, we're using forecasting. What does it mean to forecast? Sebastian, what does that mean when you hear the word forecast? What does that mean?
Like you increase or decrease the values.
Say it one more time.
You increase or decrease the values.
Yeah, so we are going to increase or decrease when we forecast something. But what numbers are we using when we forecast? Hold on one second. Give somebody else a chance. Anybody online? All right. How many of you did not watch the videos before you came to class? Okay, just only one, two, three, four.
Watched on Wednesday. In a week.
Okay. So what did we talk about on the first day of class? Our class discussion is meant to be what? A discussion, right? A discussion goes two ways. Today is our one what can I say? Today is is your grace period. Okay. In the future, if not a lot of you watch the videos and I come to class and we're going to start talking, I expect you to answer questions that were covered in the videos. We're just going to end class. Okay. We'll just end class because I'm not up here. We're up here to discuss and we can go over in more detail the information from the videos. You're supposed to watch those before you come to class. Okay. I'm not asking you to read your textbook. The videos follow the textbook. Okay. And so I'm not up here just to talk. We're up here to have a two-way conversation. And it's not fair to one or two people if they watch the videos and the other people don't watch the videos, then it's not fair to those other people that have taken the time beforehand. Okay. Even if you just play those videos in the background while you're making dinner or whatever, that's fine. Okay. But I need you to at least have watched the videos prior to class. Otherwise, I don't want to do this, but otherwise we're gonna have to start doing like quizzes at the beginning of class based on the videos. I don't want to do that. Okay. So we all make a deal that you're gonna watch the videos before we come to class. Today is the last grace period. On Wednesday, we're gonna go over chapter 3. So you need to make sure you've watched chapter 3. Take notes, jot down any questions that you might have during that process that we can definitely go over and answer in class. Okay. Those of you who are online, I need you to turn your cameras on because I need to make sure that you are here paying attention in class. All right. So, where were we? Forecasting. What is forecasting? Who uses forecast? When you hear the word forecast, what do you think about?
Other channels.
The weather.
Read it, what? The weather. Yeah. Okay. So, does the weather always right? No, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. Okay. But basically, what they're doing is they are taking the past information, what happened the last time the atmosphere conditions were this, the last time it was like that, it rained. So that means the next time I see it, it's getting close to that, I can make a logical assumption that it's going to rain. Okay. So they're forecasting. We do the same thing in our businesses when we start the budget process. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can plan for it. Okay. And when we plan for it, we are usually typically going to increase or decrease by percentages. Okay, that's the easiest way to forecast a budget is to increase or decrease by a percentage. So I'm going to say I want my sales to increase by 2%. So whatever my sales were last year, I'm going to add 2% to that, and that's going to be my new sales number for my budget. Okay, I want to decrease my expenses by 5%. So I'm going to take whatever my expenses were for the last period, get 5% of that and subtract it. So that's what, obviously we want our sales to go up and our expenses either to stay the same or go down. Okay. Now, if we know in a situation like we know the cost of things are gonna go up, right? So we might increase our cost a little bit, but we also want our sales to increase as well, okay? And we typically do that by the percentages, okay? So to do that, super easy. Number 3 on your notes page, to increase by a percentage, you're gonna multiply the original number by the percentage. And then because we are increasing, we want to add. So whatever that number is, we just add it to the original number. Okay. If we're decreasing, the first step is still the same. We're going to multiply whatever that percentage is by that number, by the original number. But then because we are decreasing, we're going to subtract. Okay. So two-step process. Two-step process. All right. So let's do some practice. Okay. So we're going to increase by 3%. Okay. From 2,000, we're going to increase by 3%. Remember, when we multiply by a percentage, we want to get that decimal place. So if it's 3%, we're going to move that decimal place over 2 and then add the 0. That's how we get 0.03. Okay. So 2,000 times 0.03 is what, Lydia?
60.
60. Okay. And then because we are increasing, we're going to add 2,060. Simple. Okay. Questions about adding or subtracting, or sorry, increasing by a percentage? Okay. Let's do another example. Increase by 2.5%. So we're going to increase from 5,000 to 2.5%. How do we write 2.5% as a decimal?
25.
0.025. Remember, we got to add in that 0. Okay, so you do the math, compare your answer with your neighbors. If you're online, you can type your answer in the chat. All right, so 2.25% is 125. Why is it not letting me write? So 5,125. Do we all agree?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Simple as that. Okay. Can I show you a shortcut? This is a two-step process, right? Step 1 is multiply, step 2 is add. Can I show you a one-step process? Okay. Now, if you need to keep it as a two-step process, by all means, keep it as a two-step process. Okay. What is 2,000 times 1?
2,000.
It's 2,000, right? 100%. We move that decimal place over 2. What do we have? Is 1. Okay. Follow me so far? If I add 1 and 0.03, I get 1.03. So if I multiply 2,000 times 1.03, it'll automatically give me 2,060. Okay? Do we see how that works? So 100%, I want to increase it by 3, so I add 3, and I get 103. Move that decimal place over 2 spots, and I have 1.03. Okay? The 1 takes care of the 2,000. The 0.03 takes care of the 60, and it automatically gives you the right answer. Okay? Because I can simply add 3 to 100, right? That's super easy. So, one-step process is just multiply 1 times, or the answer, the original number times 1 point, whatever the increase is. Okay? Let's talk about decreasing. So if my sales are 15,000 and I want to decrease by 5%, the first step is to multiply. So what is 15 times 0.05? Do we agree 650?
We're at 750.
Oh yeah, 750. 750, okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew. In the chat. Race. All right. So now, because we are subtracting, we're subtracting from the other number, our answer is 14,250. Okay. My expenses this year were 15,000. I want to decrease by 5%, so my new budget amount is 14,250. Okay. Next one is we want to decrease from 1,200 to 1.5, decrease by 1.5% from 1,200. Let's say this is 1,200 guests. We know we're not going to be that busy. We're going to decrease by 1.5%. So what is 1,200 times 0.15% or 1.5%? Zarina, what'd you get? No, 1,200 times 0.15%. So 1,200 times 0.015. 18? Do we all agree?
Mhm.
18, okay. And then because we're subtracting, 11, what is that? 82? 1182. Okay. Now, when we forecast, we are forecasting maybe the day of the week. So, what is Monday lunch like? What is Friday lunches like? Are they different? When we're forecasting, we're also looking at times of the year. Okay. So, for example, what's coming up next week on Friday? Valentine's Day. Okay. When we forecast for Valentine's Day, that's a holiday. But if Valentine's Day is on a Wednesday versus on a Friday or a Saturday, we're going to forecast a little bit differently. We may forecast a little bit differently. Not always guaranteed. Okay. I know a lot of times in hotels, for hotel rooms, it's better for. What did I just do? There it goes. For hotels, it's better when Valentine's Day is on maybe Thursday, but definitely Friday or Saturday, because then people might stay overnight versus on a Tuesday or Wednesday when they have to go back to work the next day, right? And so when you forecast just a little bit differently, what are some other reasons or some other types of events that we might forecast for besides holidays?
Sporting events.
What's that?
Sporting events.
Sporting events, yeah. Do you think that the city of New Orleans, which is hosting the Super Bowl on Sunday, right? They're probably looking at the cities that have hosted the Super Bowl last year. What did they do in as far as attendance? Okay. How many people came to their city? What else besides sporting events? So, what do you mean by weather?
Inclement weather.
Yeah, so we can't always predict when that weather is going to be bad, right? But if we budget, let's say we budget, let's look back maybe what, 2 weeks ago? Remember when we had MLK Day and then we had the freeze? So people probably budgeted for a certain amount of revenue during that holiday weekend, but because the weather was so bad, they maybe didn't meet their budget, right? And so if that's the case, you have to be able to explain why. Remember when we talked at the end of chapter 1, the variance, the difference between our budget and what actually happened? We have to be able to justify that, okay? Um, what about special events that happen? What are some special events that happen in San Antonio? Fiesta, good. That's going to be a little bit late this year. It's going to be April, end of April. It actually goes into the first week of May, right? So that's going to play a difference. If I looked at Fiesta of 2024 and it was all in April, my revenue is going to be a little bit different when it was all in April. And then this year it's going to be April and May. Okay. What else?
Rodeo?
Rodeo starts up what, next week or this week? I think it's this week. I don't remember. I haven't been in a long time. Okay, rodeo is February. Spring break is in March. April is Fiesta. And then we start moving into summertime. Okay.
Conventions that might come to the city?
Conventions, absolutely. Do y'all know what's coming in this weekend?
Coffee festival.
What's that?
Coffee festival.
Is the coffee festival this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's Saturday.
Saturday? Okay, awesome. We also have, I'll have to look at is that going to be in Travis Park usually? I think is where that is.
I think Hemisphere.
Hemisphere? Okay, nice. Cool. So Hemisphere is gonna be pretty busy then because also this weekend, or no, sorry, next weekend is gonna be the Texas Music Educators Association, TMEA. I think they bring in like 25,000 music educators across the state of Texas. And I think they combine also with the band masters. So pretty big convention. So if you're a hotel, if you're a restaurant, it's a good idea for you to know what groups are coming into town. If you're a bar, you might want to know the difference between, I don't know, college football versus when we have 20,000 Alcoholics Anonymous convention in town, right? You probably aren't going to be stocking up on your bar too much if it's going to be an Alcoholics Anonymous group versus a college football weekend, right? And so, like the Valero Alamo Bowl that comes into town every year between Christmas and New Year. So the whole thing, I mean, the whole part of that spiel is it's not enough just to be a manager of your restaurant or your hotel. You also have to be aware of what's happening in the city around you. So that way you don't get caught off guard. All right. So, income statements. An income statement is also referred to as a P&L. Income statement or a P&L, profit and loss statement. Okay. This basically is just a quick snapshot of how well our business is operating. Okay. we could look at the entire budget, but the budget is massive. There's a lot of lines. Anybody ever taken an accounting class? Whew, accounting is, it's not hard math. Everything needs to equal each other to make sure it's all balanced. But accounting, there's a lot of line items that go in play. So this is basically just a P&L, is just a quick snapshot, overall categories, so that we can make sure that we are being profitable or if we have a loss, okay? I can probably guarantee you that if Red Lobster had done a P&L snapshot like 2 months into their endless shrimp promotion, they probably would not have been like what, $15 million in the hole from endless shrimp. Did you guys hear about that? So Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy because they did an endless shrimp promotion. I think it was for like $20 for $19.99. They severely underestimated Americans' ability to eat shrimp. Okay. And I think they lost. I'll have to look it up. I'll see if I can find the news article and I'll post it in Canvas. I want to say it was like 11 to 15 million dollars they lost in revenue, in money, because they didn't price it appropriately. That's crazy, right? So if they had looked at a P&L and caught it early, they would have been like, hold on, wait a minute, this is not working for us, right? So when we look at an income statement, sales is always at the top. It's always the first line. Sales is always the first line. Why?
Important.
What's that?
Important.
It is the most important.
It's gonna have to come from how much you make in those sales.
Everything else comes from that. Remember our what was our profit and loss statement? Or what was our profit and loss equation?
Sales minus expenses.
Sales minus expenses, right? Sales minus expenses. Well, here we've got sales, and here we have expenses. So sales minus expenses is equal to profit or loss. Okay? Food and beverage is always the second line. Food and beverage is always, it may be separated into two lines, but it's always the second section. Why? Think about chapter 1. What did we talk about with food and beverage costs?
It's one of our prime costs.
It is part of our prime cost, which means it is the most, we have the most
Variable control.
control over our food and beverage costs. I can determine whether I'm going to order product or not order product based on my volume of sales. So that's why it's first. And then we have gross operating profit. Okay. So sales minus this is equal to our gross operating profit. So gross operating profit is our third line. And then we take into consideration our labor and other expenses. So labor is usually right after gross profit, because remember, labor includes part of our wages, our hourly, okay? Because labor includes salaries, we don't necessarily keep it part up here because we can't control over the salaries, okay? And then we have our others, and then our profit and loss is the bottom line, okay? So we subtract everything else, and that's our profit or loss, okay? Our P&L statement or our income statement. Questions about this? Yes.
Are labor costs and other expenses on one line?
No, they're usually separated. So it's essentially going to be like each category in your big budget, each category is going to have its own line. And you may have some subcategories underneath each one of these listed out so you can kind of see how much of each subcategory you're also spending on. But on the biggest thing is you're going to have the overall sales, the overall category of the account. Okay, so that way you can see what you're doing. Sales always equals 100%. So sales is always equal to 100%. Six on your next page. Number 7, thank you. Sales always represents 100%. Okay? So if sales is equal to 100%, then that means all of these also equals 100%. That way your equation is equal on both sides. Okay? So there is going to be a question on your final exam, which is hard to believe. We're going to talk about it right now, but this is going to be 12 weeks in the future, 14 weeks in the future. So this is what, week 2? No, this is week 3. Is this week 3? Oh my gosh, we're already in week 3.
Fourth day.
Woo! Oh my goodness. Yeah. So this is going to be 13 weeks in the future. Okay. So we got 3 months away. There's going to be one question in your final exam about this. Okay. And so it's going to give you a percentage and a dollar amount. It's going to ask you, what is your dollar amount in labor cost for your budget? You're like, Mr. Uminski, it's giving me percentages and it's giving me dollar amount. I don't know how to figure this out. Right? Well, let's use some tools that we've already talked about in class. So if all of this is equal to 100%, then what is our percentage for our labor cost? What's just the percentage? What is 25 plus 15?
40.
40 plus 11,
51,
51 plus 21,
72.
72. So what's 100 minus 72? So that means our labor is 28%. Okay. So if it asks me what is a dollar amount in labor cost, what tool am I going to use? What tool have we talked about in the last 2 classes?
Multiplying the original number by the percent.
Not quite. It's a geometric shape.
Triangle.
A triangle, right? If I'm looking for cost, percent, sales, cost. Which one am I looking for? If I'm looking for the labor cost, I cover that up, and what's left over? Percent times the sales. So what is my percent? 28%. So 300,000 times 0.28 is
140,000.
how much?
840,000.
840,000? I guess that's 3 million, sorry. So that is my budget for labor. How many of you have ever been to, like, you've overheard your boss and be like, hurry up and clock out, my labor budget's already spent. I have no more money in my labor budget. They have a certain dollar amount, right? And it's not even the same from month to month. If we know that January is really slow because there's not a lot of conventions happening downtown and there's not a lot of other things going on, people are going back to school. My budget for labor in January is going to be very different from my labor budget for March when I have spring break. Okay. And so the total for the year is 840,000. I now have to figure out, how do I take that 840,000 and divide it up by the 12 months out of the year? And then how to divide that up by the month by the 4 to 5 weeks that's in that month. And that's my budget for what I need, what I can spend on labor. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Anybody online? I did not reset my speakers, so let me just make sure. Hopefully y'all haven't tried to unmute. Can one of y'all unmute to test my speakers for me, please?
Hello.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Garrett. Okay. All right. So what I would like y'all to do is to work on the next example on the right-hand side and compare your answers to your neighbor. Okay. Compare your answers to your neighbor. So what is my budgeted profit for the year? Great, what did you get?
At 10,000.
10,000. Does anybody disagree? How did you get that?
Added up all the other percentages, like the food cost, beverage cost.
Okay,
Gave me, so I found out that the profit was 10%.
okay, so this all equals 90, which means your profit is 10. Okay,
That I multiplied the 100,000 by 1.10. I like the little technique you showed with the one. That's how I got 110,000. And so I just made it 10,000.
okay. So I like what you did to try to connect what we did prior, but in this case, we're only going to multiply by the 10%, not the 1.1, because by 1.1, we'd be increasing. So if I said I wanted to increase my percentage, then I would take whatever my original number here is and multiply by 1 point, whatever the percentage, okay? So in this case, we're just going to use this percentage here. But you're right, 10,000 is our profit, okay? Questions, comments, concerns about that? All right, so as we look at this, when we're looking at budgeting our expenses, you can see here based on the screen that we can actually break down the different categories of what our expenses are. So our food, we have meat, seafood, dairy, produce, groceries, and bakery. So we can figure out what each one of those categories are. If our overall food cost percentage is 35%, this is the percentage that makes up that whole 35. Why do you think this information is important? To break it down by different categories.
To be more precise.
Yeah, give us a little bit more precise. Which area do you think that I would look at first if I wanted to figure out how I could reduce my costs?
Like the meat or the seafood.
Okay, so meat or seafood. Good. Excellent. Yep. Andrew L., thank you so much for putting triangle. Sorry, I was not looking at my chat. I need to work on that. If you guys that are on Zoom, if you want to unmute, you can just answer the questions instead of typing in chat because I can't have chat open and write on the screen. Well, maybe I can. Never mind. I stand corrected. I can. Okay. Yes, the meat or seafood. Now, do you think if our bakery was higher than our meat and seafood, that would be an issue? Yeah, right? That might be a big blaring issue that, oh my gosh, I'm spending more on my bakery items. Maybe I'm ordering too much and they go bad, so I have to throw them away, which means I'm spending too much money, right? So this is a way for you to look at this and figure out. So we're going to come back to this in just a second. The last two steps, I want to just focus on the last two steps of the budgeting process is assessing the results and taking corrective action. Those are the last two steps. So we first have to plan it. Okay. Then we have to put it into action. Then we have to assess the results and then take corrective action. What does it mean to take corrective action? Yeah, Daniel.
Try and fix the problems.
Trying to identify the problem. So assessing the results is identifying the problems, and the corrective action is to fix the problem. If my labor cost is way out of control, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna say, hey, Dre, last time our sales dipped pretty low. Why were our labor costs so high? You forgot to send people home when it wasn't that busy? Or what was the reason, right? And so you as a manager have to be able to justify those numbers. And so you're constantly looking at those types of things. You could also look at it. I remember when I worked at Chester's Hamburgers, if you clocked out, let's say I was supposed to clock out at 3 o'clock. And if I clocked out at 3:08, the computer automatically bumped me up to 3:15. Like it always did it based on the quarter hour. And so if I clocked out at 3:08 and the computer automatically bumps me up to 3:15, that's free money, that's extra money. So the managers were always like, you got to clock out. Your shift ends at 3. I'm telling you right now, David, you got to clock out. It's 3:02. And if David takes a few extra minutes longer and he clocks out at 3:08, that's more paperwork for the manager on the back end to go back and correct that back down to 3 o'clock, right? But if the manager doesn't do that, then that's going to be more money that's going to be going out for labor. So maybe that could be our corrective action, is that our managers have to make sure that our clock out times match the schedule. And if it is not, then there has to be a justification as to why. So it's okay. Yeah, it's okay that David stayed till 3:30. But David stayed till 3:30 because the person that was coming in at 3 didn't show up until 4. And so I asked David to stay a little bit later to cover that gap. Okay, so that could be that corrective action is, okay, we've identified, here's this issue. The clock out times are not matching the schedule, and there's no justification for why somebody went over their clock out time. Okay. Questions, comments, concern about this? All right, so let's go back a couple of slides. And now where we're budgeting our expenses, okay, I want you to do these on your own and then compare your answers with your neighbor. Okay, these should be, you'll do these on your, like on the margin of your notes page. Or if you want to do a separate page and then just attach them, that's fine too. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording so you don't have to sit and watch silent sound. Then I'll restart it again when we go over it. All right. So our food costs for the first question. Food cost is how much? $8,000. So that's my budget for food cost. And then the sales for the second question is
$1,206.90.
okay, 89.90. That's okay. 11,207. That's okay as well. Remember, we used our triangles. The first one we're looking for food costs. We cross it out. Percent times the sales, okay? So make sure that 32 is 0.32. It's our 8,000. And then the second one, we're looking for a percentage, so it's our cost divided by our percentage. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns about that? Using the triangle.
How
Now,
did you-
last class, sorry, go ahead.
How did you get to 8,000 on the first question? Because I'm kind of confused. I got 800.
Okay, so I think you probably, I think it's just by a decimal, because you got 800, so you got the first number right.
The 5,000, it comes out to 800.
So you probably did 2,500 times 0.32. Yeah. So that might have been the issue.
Oh, okay.
Cool. All right, so now we're going to combine two things, our triangle and the budgeted. Okay. So this is the last question in one of your quizzes that's going to be online. Okay. It's a two-step process. You first have to find out what the new budgeted amount is. And then second, you have to apply the triangle tool. Okay. So if our last period food cost was $43,250, I want to increase my cost by 2.5%. So my first step is, what is my new budget? What is my new food and beverage, my new food budget for the next period? I'm going to increase by 2.5%.
You want us to write this one down on our note sheet as well?
If you want to, yep. That way it'll help you when you go back. So Lydia, what did you get for our new food budget?
$44,331.25.
Okay. Now, without doing any kind of math at all, does this number seem like it is correct? What do you think? Yes, no?
Yes.
Why does it seem correct?
Slight increase.
It's a slight increase, right? I'm increasing, and 44 is more than 43. That means I'm going the right direction. Okay. If I got an answer that was less than 43, I would have been like, wait, hold on 1 second. I'm not increasing now, I'm decreasing. So that's just the first thing I want you to kind of think about. Your calculator is always going to give you the correct answer, but it's not always the right answer. Does that make sense? Whatever answer your calculator is going to give you is always going to be correct,
What is its user?
but it's not always going to be the right answer because it's going to give you the correct answer based on the information that you put into it. Okay? So it may not be the right answer, but it will be correct based on the math that you put into it. Yes.
You show how we got the new budget amount again?
Yeah, of course. So I took the original amount, $43,250. and I multiplied it by 0.025. Okay? If I do that, 43,250 times 0.025, I get an answer of 1,081.25. Now, if I add that answer to my original number, I'm going to get this answer right here, 44,331.25. Okay, you're welcome. So that's my new number. Okay, now my second step is I have to apply my triangle. Okay, so step 2 is apply the triangle. Got my triangle here. Cost, percent, sales. Which one am I looking for? I'm looking for sales, so I cover that up. I do my cost of $44,331.25, and I use my food cost percentage here, divided by 0.30. So that new number, 44,331.25, divided by 0.3. $147,770.83. Yes, sir.
So, since our food cost is 30%, and 147,000 is our sales, that we am assuming that the other 70% that's our sales? Is that or no? Or am I thinking too deep into it?
Well, so this 30% is your food.
Right.
So the other 70% is all this stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that other 70% has to cover your labor, your other expenses, and your profit. That 30% just represents the food cost only. So that means as I start think about like the invoice that I shared with you guys last week on Wednesday, right? I'm gonna keep track of all those invoices. My budget was $19,000 for the summer. So every time I got an invoice, I'm gonna subtract that amount from 19,000. And I'm gonna subtract that from the new balance. So that way I know how much money I have left in my budget, so I can keep track of that. Okay. Can I control how many people walk into my restaurant? No. So my sales may not be 147,000. And that's okay. Well, it's not okay. But if our sales is not 147,000, if it's less than that, then that means our food cost should also be less than 44,000. Okay? If my sales are not what I meant, what I thought, because remember, this is a budget. This is a pretend number that's out in the future. Okay? That's my sales don't meet 147,000, then my food cost should also not be 44,000. It should be less than 44,000. But now if my food costs are 50,000, is that good or bad? Compared to 44,000 that I budgeted?
Well, it depends.
It depends. Why?
If your sales went up.
If my sales are 200,000 and my expenses are 50,000, well, yeah, that's okay. I have to be able to justify. You can't just look at your sales and be like, wow, you went way over budget. You went $6,000 over budget on your expenses. You're $50,000. It should have been 44. But you're like, yeah, I went $6,000 over my budget. But on my sales, I went 10% over on my sales. So I brought in an extra $14,000. So that's okay. I have to spend more money to get more money to come in.
So essentially, we're trying to figure out where money is coming and going.
Yeah, absolutely. We should know exactly where our money is coming and going and how much and what the percentage is. Absolutely. Okay. So if we look at these assessing our results, remember that the negative is in parentheses and in red. Okay. So let's just look real quick at our budget and our actual. And I'm going to use yellow highlighter to go line by line. So for our food, we budgeted 850,000. We brought in 925,000. So that means we brought in $75,000 more than we budgeted. Okay. For beverages, we budgeted $482,000 in sales in money. But end of the year, when I looked at it, I actually only brought in 456,000. So that's a difference of 25,900. That's a negative difference. Okay. I did not bring in as much as I thought I was going to. So let's do this. Hold on. I'm going to color code this to make it a little bit easier. So let's go with blue for food. And let's go with yellow for beverages. Okay. So food. Nope. That's not what I want to do. Let's do sales and expenses, food and beverage. So for our sales, was our food above or below budget?
Above.
Above the budget, right? We brought in more money than we thought we were going to. For the blue, 288,000, we actually spent 315,000. So that means we went over on our expenses for food by $26,000. Okay. For our beverages, we came in for sales under, and our expenses were over, meaning we spent more money than we thought we were going to for food and beverage. Okay, so which one of these is a bad situation?
Average,
Why?
because sales are down, but expenses are.
Sales are down, expenses are up. That's a bad situation. Okay. Now, sales are up, expenses are up for food. It may be good, it may be bad, but it's justifiable. Right? So for food, we actually exceeded, hold on. Yeah. For our food, we actually exceeded by 67%, and our costs were only exceeded by 22%. So that's still pretty good. Okay. Beverages. What could be a reason why our expenses are up and our sales are down for beverages? Daniel.
They misjudged how many people would buy drinks.
Okay, so they misjudged how many people would buy drinks. That would be a reason why our sales are down. But why would our expenses be up if people didn't buy those drinks?
Too many free drinks.
Giving away free drinks, okay.
They bought too much of an expensive brand.
Okay, so maybe they bought too much product of something and they didn't sell it yet. So our sales are down, but our expenses are still up. Okay, good. Anybody online have a suggestion?
Maybe like the environment wasn't like, I guess, drinkable wise.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, I'm not too sure. I was trying to like throw something out.
Okay. So maybe the environment is people just aren't buying the drinks, or maybe our bartenders are so overwhelmed. We don't have enough bartenders. Our bartenders are overwhelmed that they're not ringing in their drinks as they're giving them out. They're making the drink and then they're like, okay, I'm going to take the cash and I'm going to ring it in just a little bit later. And they forget. Okay, it happens. What else? Let's go back to Lydia's example. What was your example, Lydia?
Giving away free drinks.
Giving away free drinks. Yeah. How many of you have been to a restaurant where they forget to add your tea or your soda to the check? Anybody? You get water, okay, cool. When I was a server at TGI Fridays, my server trainer told me, this is how he trained me. He said, if you don't put somebody's drink on their check, they're gonna add that to your tip. So back then, I think sodas were $2, right? And so he told me, if I don't add that to the beverage, to the check, then they're gonna take that $2 that beverage would have cost, and they're gonna add it to my check, to my tip. How many times do you think that actually happened? Pretty close to zero, very little, right? So if I'm giving away free sodas, that means my sales are not coming in, so my sales are down, but my expenses, I still paid for that syrup, I still paid for the carbonation. So my expenses are gonna keep going up, but my sales are coming down. And that's where the corrective action comes into play. Okay? Corrective action, and this actually happened. My manager, Kristen, she was my dining room manager. She came by and was like, David, I noticed that table 42 has 4 T's on it, and there's no T in the computer system. Okay? As a manager, she can pull up every check that's open on the floor, and she can compare what's on the table compared to what's on the check. So what does that do to me? What message does that send to me as an employee? If she comes up and says, hey, David, I noticed that table 42's got 4 T's, but they're not on the check.
Trust you.
Okay, so maybe that's that she doesn't trust me, but she's doing what?
Yeah.
She's checking up. She's doing her job, right? She's checking in with me. She's just telling me, hey, by the way, David, I noticed this. Now, she might make a mental note, table 42 at 2 o'clock. And when she goes back to review the sales for the day, if table 42 at 2 o'clock is closed out and there's no T on there, then we're gonna have a conversation. David, I came by, I told you, I wanted you to add those beverages before you drop the check. You know, and it could be something that's very casual in passing. Hey, David, I noticed table 42 doesn't have T's on it. Make sure you get them on the check, because how many of you waited tables before? Anybody? If you get triple sat, what does that mean to be triple sat?
That with 3 tables at the same time.
Yeah, that means 3 tables came and sat down at the same time. The host came and put 3 tables. If you've got 4 people at each table, that's 12 drinks you're trying to get in and out, right? So maybe you got distracted, you forgot, you wanted to get the food order in. So there's plausible reasons why. But if it becomes a habit, that's when we take corrective action. Like, David, I told you at 2 o'clock, table 42, I had the check right here. I noticed there's no T on it. This is your one chance. The next time it's gonna be a write-up. Okay? Because as a manager, your goal is to maximize the revenue and keep your expenses low. If your staff is giving away free drinks, then you're not gonna be able to balance. There was one time I went to Six Flags there was a private event. And one of my students was working the lemonade stand. So of course I wanted to support her stand and get her sales up, right? But at the time, it's interesting because at the time it was cash only, and now it's card only. This is like fast forward 6 years, but back then I didn't have any cash. And she's like, it's okay, Mr. Yaminsky, you can just have this. And I was like, did I teach you nothing in cost control? I mean, yes, I will take it, thank you, but you don't give free drinks to other people. So as we do that, remember that sales, if that soda cost me 5 cents to make it, and I sell it for $2, then that's every time I do that, that's $1.95. $1.95 every single time I do that. If I have, you guys know I love my math, right? If I do $1.95, let's say times 50 people a day, That's $97.50 per day times 360 days out of the year. It's $35,100. $35,000 because my servers are giving away soda. Okay? That's a huge difference. So it's really important. We're going to talk as we look in other chapters about doing inventory. We're going to talk about ways that we can control our inventory and make sure we're keeping up with that. Okay? I think that's it. Yep. Okay, I have done attendance. Let me just do real quick. Oh no, I have 1 minute left. Never mind. I won't do it. On Wednesday, we're gonna go over chapter 3. So please watch the videos. And we are gonna have a quiz at the beginning of class for chapter 3. I don't know what it is yet because I haven't made it up yet. I'm gonna go back and rewatch my videos. I'm gonna pull some information out, and we're gonna have at least a 5-question quiz about chapter 3. Okay? I will allow it to be open notes. So take notes while you watch the video. I will allow the quiz to be open notes. Thank you so much.
What is this paper for?